Arif Rahman sat in the last row of Maple Leaf Middle School's math class during a warm April morning, quietly doodling tiny robots in his notebook while 20 restless students waited for class to begin. He was 12, small for his age, and he rarely spoke in class, yet he loved numbers more than comic books and kept a secret puzzle journal he solved under a flashlight after bedtime. The substitute teacher, Ms. Thorne, strode into the room wearing bright red heels that clicked loudly on the tile floor, and every click sounded like a drum announcing that something serious was about to happen. She smiled a thin smile, unfolded a crisp syllabus, and told the class that today would be a challenge meant to uncover talent or expose lazy minds. Most students exchanged worried looks because Ms. Thorne had a reputation whispered in hallways that she once wrote math problems, so tricky they made ninth graders cry during a contest on local television. Arif listened carefully while still drawing, tracing circles that turned into gear wheels, and his calm face made Ms. Thorne narrow her eyes as if she sensed a secret she intended to uncover before lunch bell rang. She announced that the hardest problem she legally could give to sixth graders was waiting on her tablet, and she planned to select one volunteer to tackle it on the board while everyone watched and learned. A hush fell over the room like a heavy blanket as students stared at their desks, hoping invisibility would save them from embarrassment, and even the class clown suddenly cared very much about sharpening his pencil. Arif kept looking forward, not hiding, but not raising his hand either, because attention made his chest feel tight even though math itself felt light and friendly in his mind like a favorite video game level. Miss Thorne's sharp heels clicked toward the back row, louder with each step, until she stopped beside Arif's desk and tapped his open notebook where the neat little robots march along the paper's edge. She asked if he was brave enough to test his skill, her voice sugary sweet yet edged like scissors, and before he found words to reply she invited him to the front as though the decision was already made. Arif's best friend, Raza, whispered good luck, squeezing his own hands together, and the rest of the class leaned back to clear a path while curious eyes followed Arif like spotlights in a theater. The walk to the whiteboard felt longer than the school hallway, but Arif breathed slowly, remembering how his older sister said fear and excitement feel the same inside, so pretend it is excitement and keep going. Miss Thorne tapped a button on her tablet, and the board lit up with a gigantic equation filled with square roots, exponents, and fractions stacked like a wobbly tower, daring someone to straighten it. The substitute folded her arms and told the class that this monster had stumped many older students, hinting that failure would be understandable and even educational for everyone present. Several students gulped loudly, but Arif studied the puzzle as if it were a detailed map, spotting familiar patterns that looked like landmarks he had visited in the pages of math contest books. While the teacher explained the rules of the challenge, no hints, 5-minute limit, marker only, Arif mentally broke the problem into sections the way one might slice a large pizza so friends can share fairly. He accepted the dry erase marker Ms. Thorne offered like a knight receiving a sword, though the plastic felt slippery in his small fingers, and a tiny squeak escaped when he uncapped it. The room seemed to shrink as every breath and cough echoed, and even the distant lawn mower outside paused as if the world waited to see what the quiet kid would do next. Arif wrote the first step with steady strokes, rewriting the long radical expression into 2 smaller parts, and a few students gasped because he made it look surprisingly simple. Ms. Thorne's smile tightened, and she reminded everyone to stay silent, but the sparkle of doubt flickered in her eyes the way clouds cross a sunny sky without warning. Arif underlined similar terms, drew arrows connecting twins that would cancel each other, and whispered explanations so gentle that even the struggling students understood pieces of the strategy. Raza grinned wide, scribbling notes because he knew a kind genius was giving a free mini-lesson in disguise, and he did not want to forget it later during homework time. The ticking wall clock grew louder, measuring seconds like a referee, yet Arif felt calm as if walking on a narrow beam he had practiced on many quiet nights in his bedroom. He simplified a scary fraction into a tidy whole number, erased clutter, and paused so everyone could see the board transform from jungle vines into a clear garden path. The class leaned forward in unison, chairs creaking, eyes bright, realizing that mistakes were not arriving and something incredible was unfolding right before them. Miss Thorne tapped her foot faster, bracelets jingling a nervous tune, and she cleared her throat again, but no student dared laugh now because respect replaced earlier anticipation of mockery. Arif crossed out the final redundant term, turned a tangle into a single neat expression, and underlined the last answer twice with a straight, confident line. He capped the marker, stepped back, and the finished solution glowed under classroom lights, simple and correct, like a puzzle box opened to reveal an obvious prize everyone had missed. For a heartbeat no one spoke, and even the ceiling fan seemed silent, until Raza clapped once, starting an applause that spread like ripples across a still pond. Miss Thorne raised a hand to stop the noise, face flushing pink, and she double-checked the work line by line, hunting for any slip that could save her planned lesson about failure. After 2 long minutes, she sighed, admitted aloud that the solution was perfect, and the word perfect echoed through every student's mind like sunlight suddenly filling a dim room. Arif nodded politely, cheeks warming, but inside he was pleased not for himself alone. He was happy because now his classmates saw math as a friend rather than a monster. Miss Thorne forced a thin smile, thanked him, and said the class should give another round of applause, which they did, louder and prouder the second time. She then announced that the schedule must change because the challenge was finished early, and she promised a surprise quiz later, though her voice lacked its earlier sharpness. Arif returned to his seat, and Raza bumped his shoulder with quiet joy, while other students whispered plans to ask Arif for study tips during recess. The substitute started a new lecture on geometry, but half the class kept glancing back at Arif as if his ordinary sneakers now held secret rocket engines. Outside, the window pigeons fluttered onto the playground fence, pecking crumbs, unaware that inside the classroom a reputation had just been born in less than 10 minutes. Arif opened his regular workbook, hid a shy smile, and added a tiny note beside a robot drawing that read, "Math is just a story waiting to be told step by step." Though the day moved on, everyone knew they would remember the morning when a teacher chose the hardest problem to mock a student and discovered a genius instead. The lunch bell rang, and the hallway buzzed like a beehive as students retold the morning miracle, each voice adding color until Arif's calm victory sounded like a legend pulled from a comic book. Raza walked beside his friend, holding a tray of pizza and milk, asking how Arif could stay so cool while an entire classroom practically held its breath and counted his every move. Arif shrugged shyly, saying big equations were like giant sandwiches. You just take one bite at a time. An answer so simple that even second graders passing by nodded with sudden understanding. At a nearby table, a cluster of older kids from 7th grade whispered, stealing glances, and one finally approached to shake Arif's hand, calling him the number ninja of Maple Leaf Middle. Miss Thorne stood by the teacher's lounge door, half-hidden, listening to the cafeteria gossip swirl, and her frown softened as she realized her harsh lesson had become an unexpected gift to the school. After lunch, the principal, Mr. Basra, summoned Ms. Thorne to his office, praising her for uncovering talent but reminding her that encouragement, not embarrassment, was the true heart of teaching. She nodded, cheeks pink, promising to honor that advice, though inside she still wrestled with curiosity about Arif's quiet brilliance and how she could help it grow. The principal then called Arif over the intercom, his name echoing through corridors like a drumroll, and every student paused mid-sentence to wonder what would happen next. Arif entered the office clutching his math notebook like a lucky charm and found both adults smiling, which made his stomach flutter more than any equation ever could. Mr. Basra explained that the district math fair was only 2 weeks away and Maple Leaf needed a representative. He asked whether Arif would accept the honor of competing. Arif's eyes widened and he glanced at Ms. Thorne, who gave a small, encouraging nod, so he agreed, though his voice came out as a whisper softer than the rustle of notebook pages. The principal handed him a printed packet of practice problems, each with a tiny star marking difficulty, and told him the school would provide after-class space for study sessions. Back in homeroom, news traveled faster than text messages. By the time Arif sat down, classmates were already debating what mascot should appear on school banners supporting their new math hero. Amid the excitement, one student named Farah folded a paper crane and balanced it on Arif's desk, calling it a good luck talisman, and the simple gesture made him grin from ear to ear. Miss Thorne cleared her throat, announcing she would host daily preparation workshops open to anyone who wanted to sharpen problem-solving skills alongside Arif. Her invitation surprised some students who expected her to stay distant, yet curiosity outweighed fear, and 15 hands shot up, eager to join the training. That afternoon, the first session met in the library, where sunbeams painted golden lines across shelves, and the scent of old pages mixed with anticipation like cookies still baking. Arif stood at a whiteboard again, but this time Ms. Thorne sat among the circle of desks, notebook ready, showing that even teachers can learn with their students. He started by reviewing multiplication tricks that let you square numbers ending in 5 without a calculator, and giggles erupted as classmates discovered they could impress parents at dinner. Raza demonstrated one trick himself, stumbling at first, then nailing it, earning a fist bump from Arif and a proud cheer from the group. Farah sketched the steps with bright markers, decorating margins with tiny stars, turning notes into colorful maps that any wandering mind could follow back to understanding. As the afternoon light dimmed, Ms. Thorne introduced a brain teaser about frogs and lily pads, and Arif guided everyone toward the elegant solution without ever handing out the answer outright. When the correct pattern finally clicked, the room erupted in high fives, and even the quiet librarian smiled, writing math club meeting times on the community board in curly chalk letters. On the way home, Arif's older sister, Mina, heard his story and nearly dropped her backpack, calling him Professor Peanut because he was small yet packed with mega brain power like a shelf full of surprises. That night, the Rahman family celebrated with homemade biryani, and Arif's father recounted how numbers had helped him manage shop finances, proving mathematics could build futures as solid as brick walls. After dinner, Mina helped quiz her brother using flashcards, rewarding correct answers with goofy dance moves that made Arif laugh so hard he nearly spilled water on his workbook. Before bed, he taped Farah's paper crane above his desk lamp, promising the tiny bird he would study every night until the fair, because promises, like equations, should balance perfectly. He flipped through the contest packet, circling his toughest areas, and drew a schedule that balanced homework, soccer practice, and math drills without stealing time from sleep or stories. Down the hall, Ms. Thorne typed an email to the principal explaining her plan to invite community volunteers, engineers, store owners, retired professors to share real-world math stories during practice. She paused before hitting send, realizing that today she had learned more about humility than about fractions, and she felt oddly lighter, like someone had opened a window in her mind. Across town, rumors of the number ninja reached the district science club, and a student named Omar, reigning math fair champion, smirked, eager to meet his new challenger. Omar began timing himself on old exam questions, determined not to be surprised by a sixth grader, while his younger brother filmed a goofy montage titled Operation Outsolve. Back in Arif's room, the digital clock blinked 10 o'clock, yet he solved one last puzzle, writing the answer in careful digits, then closed the notebook with satisfied finality. He whispered goodnight to the paper crane, to his robots, and to the silent numbers waiting inside tomorrow's lessons, trusting they would still make sense in the morning. Elsewhere, Ms. Thorne set her alarm early, planning to review contest rubrics, and she placed a sticky note on her mirror that read "Teach with heart, not fear." In homes all over town, classmates dreamed of spectacular victories and free pizza promised by Mr. Basra if Maple Leaf won first place at the fair. A cool breeze drifted through open windows, stirring curtains like gentle waves, and even the streetlights seemed to blink Morse code, cheering the budding team onward. Every corner of the community felt the spark that a single act of courage can light, traveling faster than electricity along everyday conversations. While the moon climbed higher, Arif slept deeply, imagining numbers floating like friendly fireflies, each carrying a possible path toward the big day. And somewhere in that quiet night, the story of a teacher who once mocked a student but chose to stand beside him began its next chapter, bright and wide open as a new page. The next morning, Arif reached the library early, and the smell of fresh paper filled the air like a promise that every blank page could become a victory flag beneath the library's tall windows. Miss Thorne greeted him with a smile warmer than yesterday, carrying a box of colorful markers and a stack of practice sheets printed with bold, friendly fonts to make hard problems look less scary under the quiet buzz of fluorescent lights. Soon classmates arrived in waves, yawning, chatting, and dropping backpacks with happy thumps that shook dust from tall windows, turning sleepy silence into busy excitement while the scent of new markers drifted. Raza balanced 3 muffins on one palm, declaring them study fuel, and everyone laughed when one chocolate chip escaped and rolled away like a tiny runaway planet with morning sun spilling like gold paint. Farah taped motivational posters on the walls, each showing a puzzle piece joining another, reminding them that teamwork could turn tangled questions into clear pictures as eager footsteps echoed down aisles. Arif opened the first practice sheet and saw a maze of fractions that twisted like spaghetti, but he smiled because he knew spaghetti untangles if you twirl it just right while ceiling fans whispered overhead. He showed a trick of multiplying tops and bottoms by the same number, calling it the magic mirror move, and even Omar's friend, who had joined to spy, nodded in surprise under banners fluttering from the vents. Miss Thorne watched with quiet pride, her pencil racing across a notebook where she jotted future lesson ideas, proof that a good teacher keeps learning forever, with soft chalk dust dancing in beams. Halfway through the session, the fire alarm beeped a quick test tone, startling everyone. Yet Arif used the pause to invent a lightning round of mental math that felt like a fun game show as sneakers squeaked on polished tiles. Contestants answered simple questions fast, winning stickers shaped like tiny calculators, and soon the tables shook with claps each time someone whispered the right answer first while laughter bubbled like soda foam. When the librarian reminded them to lower voices, They whispered answers instead, and the soft hush made the game feel even more secret and special. Across town, Omar practiced alone, pacing his bedroom while stopwatch numbers flashed red on his phone, but his sister teased him, saying he looked worried for a champion. He answered that hidden talent can be dangerous because no one sees it coming, then solved another equation in record time just to prove the words wrong. Back at Maple Leaf, Ms. Thorne introduced geometry puzzles about tiling floors with triangles, and she laid colored paper pieces on the table like a bright jigsaw. Arif and Raza arranged pieces into a star, discovering that 6 equilateral triangles fit perfectly around a point, a fact that felt like unlocking a secret door. Farah sketched the shapes in her notebook, adding smiley faces inside each triangle, because learning smiles back when you decorate it with joy. At lunchtime, the team ate outside under budding trees where finches chirped overhead, and Arif explained how prime numbers are like the building blocks of all other numbers. A breeze tossed napkins into the air, and everyone chased them laughing, proving that even future math stars sometimes sprint after flying paper like wild puppies. While they played, Miss Thorne checked her email and saw replies from community volunteers, an engineer, a baker who measures dough precisely, and a bus driver who tracks fuel mileage. She grinned, imagining real-world math stories turning dry numbers into living adventures for her students. That afternoon, the engineer visited, rolling in a suitcase filled with gears and wires, and he challenged the kids to calculate gear ratios that make a robot arm lift a book. Arif's eyes lit up, and he solved the ratio aloud, then suggested a simpler alternative design, impressing the engineer so much he offered to mentor the boy after the fair. News of the mentorship spread through the hall like a quick breeze, lifting spirits higher than the colorful kites flying on the playground after school. Omar scrolled social media and saw a photo of Arif beside the engineer's demo robot, and he whispered, "This kid keeps leveling up," before diving back into practice problems. Later that week, a thunderstorm darkened the sky, knocking out power at Maple Leaf, but Ms. Thorne refused to cancel practice and guided everyone to the gym lit by emergency lights. There she drew problems on a big flip chart, and the dim red glow made their study circle look like brave campers sharing riddles around a futuristic campfire. When thunder boomed, Raza jumped, dropping his pen, and laughter echoed until thunder answered again like giant applause from the clouds. Arif calmed the group by turning each thunderclap into a countdown beat for rapid-fire mental division, transforming fear into focus. The storm soon passed, and the custodian restored lights that blinked alive one by one, just as everyone solved the final problem in perfect unison. Principal Basra entered, soaked from checking drains outside, and congratulated them on resilience, promising extra recess time once sunshine returned. Days raced by like quick pages in a comic, and the giant calendar in a hallway showed only 3 squares left before the district fair. Miss Thorne scheduled a mock contest, seating Arif and Omar on opposite ends of the cafeteria, while classmates cheered like a mini audience. The practice test began, pencils scratched, and tension hummed louder than the refrigerator motors behind the lunch counter. Arif finished first, but Omar finished seconds later, and both papers were perfect, prompting collective gasps that felt like fireworks without sound. Seeing equal scores, Arif offered Omar a high five, and Omar, surprised, slapped his palm and grinned, admitting the challenge felt more fun than rivalry. Miss Thorne declared them co-captains of Maple Leaf's math squad, and the cafeteria erupted in cheers so loud even the cooks peeked out to see the commotion. That night, Arif wrote a thank you note to Ms. Thorne, folding it into a bright envelope sprinkled with tiny robot stickers as a reminder of his notebook doodles. He placed the envelope on her desk the next morning before anyone else arrived, then practiced deep breathing to steady nerves because the fair was tomorrow. At home, Mina helped him pack sharpened pencils, spare erasers, and the paper crane, now attached to a string so it could ride in his pocket like a brave companion. Before turning out the light, Arif whispered a promise to give his best and to remember that math is just a story of patterns waiting to be told. Sunrise painted the sky pink as the Maple Leaf math team boarded the yellow school bus, their backpacks stuffed with pencils, snacks, and brave hopes that rattled like dice in a cup. The morning light reflected off puddles from last night's rain, making the roadside trees look like they were standing on glowing shards of glass. Arif sat near the window, gripping the paper crane, and every bump in the road felt like the tick of a giant clock pushing them closer to the mysterious contest hall downtown. Omar dropped into the seat across the aisle, flashing a thumbs up that turned Arif's nerves into a fizz of excitement instead of fear, like soda bubbles racing to pop. Miss Thorne paced the bus aisle rehearsing kind pep talks, her note card full of reminders that learning counts more than trophies. Raza unfolded a comic and pretended to read, but his eyes kept darting to the notebook where he had doodled a cheering crowd, hoping the drawing would become real soon. The bus rounded a corner, and the glass towers of Riverdale Convention Center rose ahead, their silver panels reflecting sunlight like giant mirrors saying welcome. The driver honked a playful tune, and students from other buses waved through their windows. Inside, the lobby banners in bright blues and greens fluttered above tables where volunteers handed out numbered badges and matching lanyards to teams from many schools. Arif traced the raised print on his badge, Maple Leaf Middle, competitor, feeling the letters buzz under his finger like small motors powering courage, and he imagined the textured letters as armor plates promising protection in the upcoming battle. A brass band from the hosting high school played a lively tune, and drums thumped in everyone's chests, turning plain nerves into marching band excitement. The teams filed into a vast auditorium with rows of desks shining under stage lights, each desk holding 2 sharpened pencils, an answer sheet, and a tiny chocolate coin that smelled faintly of oranges, making Arif picture firework confetti victory. Omar whispered that the chocolate was probably a bribe to keep answers sweet, and Arif laughed. The quick joke floated upward and seemed to hang under the high ceiling, easing tension in rows far beyond their own. Principal Basra greeted them in the aisle, suit freshly pressed, promising that whatever happened, they would still get free pizza at school on Monday. Farah waved her lucky poster from the stands where supporters sat, and its bright puzzle pieces glimmered every time the spotlights panned across the audience. The announcer's voice boomed from speakers, explaining that round 1 would be a 40-minute test of mixed problems. No calculators, pure brain power and grit. Ms. Thorne squeezed Arif's shoulder, whispering that stories end well when heroes trust their training, and he nodded, remembering every late-night practice. The clock on the big screen reset to 40:00, and a hush settled so deep even the air vents seemed to hold their breath, waiting for pencils to scratch life into paper. At the buzzer, Arif scanned the first page like a detective spotting clues, circling easy problems to tackle fast and underlining tough ones for a second pass. He solved a pattern question about square numbers in less than 30 seconds, the answer sliding into place like a puzzle piece clicking home. Numbers raced across his thoughts like quicksilver fish in a clear stream. Beside him, Omar raced through a tricky ratio, and they exchanged quick smiles, silent proof that rivals can still be friends sharing the same storm. Questions grew harder near the middle, weaving geometry with fractions, but Arif broke them apart using tricks he had shared with classmates only a week before. He imagined each fraction as a slice of Mina's birthday cake, counting slices faster than candles, and suddenly the intimidating numbers looked tasty. Halfway through, a proctor announced 20 minutes left, and heartbeat drums kicked up again, yet Arif remained calm by whisper counting breaths 4 at a time. He reached the final page and paused at a monster problem wrapped in exponents, roots, and repeating decimals that hissed like tangled snakes. For one heartbeat, the room melted away, leaving just him and the numbers floating like fireflies begging for order, and he began to line them up. He factored the base, tamed a decimal, and spotted a hidden cancellation trick Raza had discovered during the thunderstorm practice in the gym. Bit by bit, the monster shrank, until only a polite little integer remained, and Arif wrote it neatly, underlining twice for good luck. He flipped back to review earlier answers, fixing a small sign error that blinked at him like a loose bulb, then rested his pencil exactly as the buzzer sounded. Papers were collected, and the auditorium burst into chatter as tension leaked out like air from a pop balloon, replaced by curious excitement for scores. While judges scanned answer sheets through humming machines, teams gathered in a lounge where juice boxes and pretzels waited on long tables. Raza handed Arif a grape juice, declaring it the drink of champions, and Farah pressed a tiny gold star sticker onto his badge for extra luck. A scoreboard attendant in a neon vest tapped keys so fast the display flickered like lightning. Scores flashed onto the big screen line by line, and cheers erupted from different corners each time a school's name appeared in the top 10. When Maple Leaf hit 3rd place overall, their row exploded in celebration, and Arif felt light as the crane that fluttered inside his pocket. Omar pumped his fist, shouting that the real climb starts now, because only the top 4 teams advanced to the live buzzer round after lunch. Ms. Thorne hugged both boys at once, promising ice cream if they held their spot or even climbed higher, which made everyone grin wider. The lunch break raced by, sandwiches tasted like confetti, and every conversation fluttered with problem-solving tips disguised as jokes. In the restroom mirror, Arif practiced a steady gaze, telling his reflection that numbers are friends, not foes, and friends always cheer you on. The buzzer round stage looked like a quiz show set, with podiums lit in rainbow LED stripes and buttons that glowed when never pressed. Principal Basra secured Maple Leaf's cheering section near the front, where classmates waved homemade foam fingers shaped like giant plus signs. Sitting at the podium, Arif laid the paper crane beside his buzzer, its tiny wings spread as if ready to take flight with every correct answer. The host explained lightning round rules. 20 questions, fastest correct buzz earns points. Wrong buzz deducts. Teamwork allowed only by quick whispers, and with the roar of the crowd still ringing in their ears, Omar and Arif bumped knuckles, ready to dance with numbers under the brightest lights they had ever faced. Arif closed his eyes for half a breath as the stage lights dimmed, hearing the audience settle into a hush so deep even the ticking of his wristwatch sounded like a drum roll in a movie trailer. The first question flashed on the screen. What is the least common multiple of 12 and 18? And Omar slammed his buzzer, so fast the rainbow ring barely flickered before glowing solid blue. He leaned toward the mic and answered 36 with calm confidence, scoring Maple Leaf its opening points and triggering a cheer that rolled through the auditorium like a friendly wave. Arif grinned because 36 had been their warm-up problem on the bus, and the familiarity felt like a high five from the past assuring them the future would cooperate. The next school buzzed in on a geometry question and got it wrong, losing points and reminding every team that speed could be a trickster if accuracy lagged behind by even a heartbeat. Question 3 involved a pattern of odd numbers building a staircase, and Arif recognized the hidden square numbers beneath the patterned steps the way one sees a stepladder behind a curtain. He whispered the answer 49 to Omar, who hit the buzzer and spoke clearly, earning more applause and another gleaming row of green lights on their team's scoreboard column. Miss Thorne squeezed her hands together in the front row, rocking on her toes each time the boys scored, looking like a parent watching twin toddlers take their first daring steps. The host fired off a rapid-fire set of fraction conversions, the numbers marching across the screen like soldiers, and Maple Leaf matched step for step, nailing 3 in a row without hesitation. Across the stage, the Riverdale Rockets grabbed a probability question about coin flips, narrowing the gap, their captain flashing a grin meant to intimidate. Halfway through the round, Maple Leaf and Riverdale were tied, and the scoreboard glowed 2 bright 10s side by side, making the contest feel like a seesaw frozen exactly level mid-swing. Arif steadied his breathing, remembering Mina's advice that big moments are just small moments stacked together like bricks, so focus on the brick in your hand, not the whole wall. The next prompt appeared, express 2/3 as a repeating decimal, and Arif buzzed first, stating 0.6 repeating, his voice steady, even as the echo bounced back at him from rafters. Another tie, another inhale. The lights felt warmer, sweat prickled under his collar, and a bead of sweat raced down his temple. Question 13 combined area and perimeter of a weird L-shaped garden, a type Miss Thorne had drilled after school. Omar traced the invisible shape with his finger and buzzed halfway through. He announced 72 square meters, nailed both parts, and Maple Leaf leapt into the lead by 2, the audience clapping in rhythm like a chant building at a soccer match. The Rockets clawed back with a lightning-fast answer about integer roots, the scoreboard gap shrinking to 1, and tension spread like ripples across a pond disturbed by a pebble. Arif noticed Raza in the front row mouthing breathe, so he inhaled deeply, smelling stage dust and faint popcorn from the concession stand, the mundane sense grounding him in the flashy chaos. Question 16 was wordy, mixing trains, times, and kilometers. Arif skimmed diagonally, locating numbers first, building the story second. He buzzed at the final mark, calculating 120 kilometers before collision, and the judge's nod felt like a sunrise in miniature illuminating his chest. The scoreboard dinged. Maple Leaf was up 3 with 4 questions left, but Omar whispered don't coast yet, because math races reward turtles that sprint at the end. The Rockets took the 17th question, factors of 99, answering 9 and 11 faster than anyone could blink, and the gap slid back to 2. Question 18 arrived, a tricky sequence jumping by alternating differences. Omar frowned a microsecond, but Arif saw the pattern mirror their triangle tiling exercise from the library session. He pressed the buzzer, answered 21, and felt the crane feather kiss his hand as if the paper bird approved the choice with a silent flutter in neat glowing rows that calmed his racing thoughts. The Rockets' captain Mizbuzzed question 19, mixing up prime and composite, and the deduction pushed Maple Leaf into a 4-point cushion that looked sturdy yet not unbreakable. Only one question remained, an all-or-nothing finale worth 3 points, and every light in the hall dimmed except the glowing numbers on the big screen and the red timers over each podium. The host spoke slowly, find the smallest 3-digit palindrome divisible by 9, and silence blanketed the stage so thick it could be folded like cloth. Arif's brain leapt into gear, scanning palindromes from 101 upward, dividing by 9 mentally, feeling each remainder like beads sliding on an abacus. 181 divided by 9 equaled 21, and he slammed the buzzer an instant before the Rockets' captain raised her hand. The glow around the Maple Leaf podium flared bright green, judges nodded, and the scoreboard rolled upward, crowning them 18-14, champions by math and momentum. Raza handed Arif a grape juice, calling it the drink of champions, and Farah pressed a tiny gold star onto his badge for luck. The plus-sign fingers flailed like green seaweed in a stormy tide of celebration. Cheers erupted, foam plus-sign fingers waved wildly, and Ms. Thorne covered her mouth with both hands, eyes shining as if fireworks were launching from every seat at once. Principal Basra high-fived every student in reach, shouting free pizza multiplied into free Sundays, his tie askew and face glowing brighter than any stage bulb. Omar hugged Arif so hard the paper crane crinkled, but neither cared because the little bird had flown them to victory and could be straightened later with gentle thumbs. The host presented golden calculator trophies shaped like smiling numbers, and flash cameras popped like popcorn, capturing the moment for morning news and proud refrigerator doors. Farah's poster unfurled from the balcony, puzzle pieces sparkling, and the brass band struck up a triumphant flourish that rattled loose glitter from leftover decorations. Backstage reporters asked Arif what winning felt like, and he answered that it felt the way decimals line up neatly, everything suddenly in its perfect place, easy to read and share. The engineer mentor snapped a selfie with the team, promising summer internships in his workshop full of gears, wires, and possibilities that hummed louder than any applause. The bus ride home buzzed with laughter, trophies clinking whenever wheels hit a bump, while city lights winked through the windows. Arif finally unfolded the crane, smoothed its wings flat, and wrote today's date and score on its belly, knowing the memory would rest there like a pearl in a paper shell forever. Maple Leaf Middle threw a welcome home assembly the next morning, and when Arif walked into the gym, the floor vibrated with stomps that sounded like 1,000 high-fives clapping all at once while rainbow streamers rained from the rafters. The principal handed him a microphone that felt heavier than his trophy, yet his voice came out clear as he thanked everyone for cheering, promising that any kid could learn the same math supermoves with enough practice and patience. Miss Thorne, standing beside him, admitted to the whole school that she had first planned to embarrass Arif but instead learned that courage grows faster when watered with kindness instead of sarcasm. The crowd gasped, then cheered even louder, because students like honesty almost as much as pizza, and her words turned the shy corners of the gym into bright pockets of respect. Raza rolled out a poster showing the paper crane soaring over a number line, and he declared the new math club mascot to be Captain Symmetry, causing a burst of giggles that echoed like popping bubble wrap. Farah led a chant spelling MATH with arm motions, and the letters rippled across rows of classmates like a human wave at a cricket match, rising and falling in perfect 4-beat rhythm. After the assembly, a local news crew interviewed the team on the front steps, cameras whirring while morning sun bounced off their golden calculator trophies like tiny spotlights. The reporter asked Arif what came next, and he answered that winning was only level 1. Now they wanted to build a tutoring program so every student could level up together. Omar nodded, adding that helping others was the ultimate bonus round, which made the reporter laugh and promise to add the quote to the evening broadcast. During lunch, the cafeteria served free sundaes just as the principal had vowed, and students decorated theirs with candy pieces shaped like plus, minus, times, and divide symbols. Arif saved one bright blue plus sign and taped it into his notebook, deciding it would remind him that adding friends is the best math trick of all. That afternoon, Ms. Thorne announced open sign UPS for the new Math Adventure Club, promising field trips to science museums, game show-style practice sessions, and puzzles hidden around school like tiny treasure hunts. 30 students signed up in the first 5 minutes, their pens scratching so fast it sounded like a gentle rainstorm falling on the sign-up sheet. Arif spent the next week designing the first treasure hunt, hiding fraction clues inside library books, beneath music stands, and even taped under a basketball hoop in the gym. He labeled each clue with a cartoon robot and a QR code that read the next hint aloud when scanned, mixing technology and paper like peanut butter and jelly. The hunt launched Friday at recess, and clusters of kids dashed through hallways solving riddles, their laughter skipping ahead of them like pebbles skimming across a pond. One clue asked them to balance a seesaw using beanbags marked with numbers, teaching that equations are just playful teeter-totters waiting for balance. Another clue challenged them to fold origami cranes whose wing angles formed right triangles, honoring Arif's lucky bird while sneaking in geometry. Even teachers joined the fun, and Coach Patel proudly shouted that sports used math too, calculating ball arcs every time someone aimed for the hoop. By lunch, the final group cracked the treasure chest, a shoebox painted gold, stuffed with pencil toppers shaped like cheerful digits and coupon cards for extra library checkout time. Arif watched from the door, heart glowing warmer than the trophy medal, because he saw that the same thrill he felt on stage now sparkled in everyone's eyes. Over the weekend, the engineer mentor invited Arif, Omar, and Raza to his workshop, a converted garage humming with gears, 3D printers, and a friendly robot dog that wagged its antenna tail. He taught them to program the dog to fetch color blocks whose hues matched coded math operations, so a red block meant addition and a blue block meant exponents. The boys laughed each time the robot barked electronic beeps that sounded suspiciously like the digits of pi, and they challenged it to race across the floor in a zigzag shaped like a coordinate grid. On Sunday night, Arif wrote a reflection letter for English class, explaining that math contests were exciting, but sharing knowledge felt like planting seeds that would outgrow any trophy shelf. He compared tutoring to shining flashlights in a dark attic, where corners fill with shapes once you show them light, and his teachers star the metaphor with a bright yellow sticker. Monday morning, the district superintendent visited Maple Leaf, congratulating the students and announcing a grant for new classroom tablets, earned because the school showed community-powered excellence. Arif suggested loading each tablet with a Puzzle of the Day app that scored points for teamwork answers, and the superintendent wrote it down with a nod that looked very close to a promise. At recess, younger students lined up for Arif's autograph on notebook covers, lunch boxes, and even one plaster cast on a sprained ankle, calling him Professor Peanut just like Mina. He felt shy but signed anyway, drawing tiny cranes beside his name, so kids would remember that luck folds out of simple paper when you practice enough times. That evening, Ms. Thorne invited Arif's family for dinner to celebrate their shared lesson, serving homemade lasagna cut into perfect rectangles and using a ruler to prove equal portions for every guest. During dessert, she presented Arif with a new notebook embossed with silver gears and a dedication line reading, "For the boy who turned numbers into bridges." Mina clapped so hard her spoon rattled, and Arif whispered that bridges are strongest when many beams work together, promising to keep building with friends at every step. Spring rolled into summer, and the Math Adventure Club met twice a week under shading oak trees, solving puzzles while squirrels dropped acorns that bounced like eager exclamation points. They planned a community fair booth teaching grocery store math, demonstrating unit prices with real fruit, and Omar practiced jokes about bananas being perfectly appealing to break any nerves. On the last day of 6th grade, the principal announced next year's Regional Science and Math Expo theme would be Everyday Equations, and Maple Leaf would host for the first time ever. Cheers shook the halls again, and Farah gleefully declared they already had the best display idea. A life-size maze whose walls change height based on correct answers, turning visitors into walking variables. Arif looked at his friends, at Ms. Thorne, and at the bright banners still hanging in the gym, realizing that the hardest problem the teacher had once used to mock him had solved something bigger than math. It had added hope. He smiled at the thought that numbers were tiny stories of balance and possibility, and every time people shared those stories, they stitched stronger threads through their community quilt. Tucking the now-famous paper crane into a clear sleeve of his new notebook, Arif whispered good night to future puzzles, certain that whatever questions tomorrow brought, Maple Leaf Middle would solve them side by side. The hot September sun rose over Maple Leaf Middle on Expo Day, and colorful booths filled the field like puzzle pieces clicking into place while parents carried folding chairs like explorers with gear. Balloons shaped like plus signs bobbed overhead, their ribbons twinkling each time the marching band practiced a brass chord in the parking lot behind the gym. Arif arrived early wearing a bright blue club t-shirt that read numbers build bridges, and the paper crane peeked from his pocket as if eager to take a flying tour of every exhibit. Miss Thorne greeted him with a clipboard and a smile, explaining that judges would arrive in exactly 60 minutes, so last-minute checks mattered like the final steps of a recipe before baking. Omar adjusted the control tablet for their life-size maze, tapping commands that made walls hum upward or sink down so smoothly they resembled elevators made of painted plywood. Raza tested the entry gate, rolling a basketball through to be sure sensors counted the ball as a visitor, which made everyone laugh because the scoreboard immediately read "Welcome, Mr. Basketball." Farah placed bright arrows on the grass showing where correct math answers unlocked shortcut doors, and each arrow wore a tiny cartoon smile, so no guest would feel scolded by mistakes. Behind them, the engineer mentor set up a robot arm that handed out maze tickets only after visitors solved a quick riddle about gear ratios, proving machines can give high fives made of metal. Students from rival schools wandered by, jaws dropping when they saw the moving walls, and one whisper that Maple Leaf must have hired amusement park wizards as secret helpers. Arif laughed and explained that wizards were just kids with practice, then solved a fraction puzzle on a whiteboard so quickly that even the whisper turned into a wow. The mayor arrived wearing a sunflower tie, and he shook Arif's hand, saying he loved how the maze turned math into a real adventure instead of a worksheet hiding in a desk. News cameras followed the mayor, so Ms. Thorne reminded the team to smile like friendly billboard models, and Omar joked that his cheeks might cramp before the final judging bell. At 10 o'clock, the first family entered the maze, and the little brother shouted, "This is like a video game you walk inside," which sounded exactly like the slogan Farah had painted on the banner. A faint breeze carried the scent of kettle corn and fresh paint, mixing into a fairground perfume that made even waiting in line feel like part of the adventure. Each correct answer raised a green light and lowered a wall, making paths appear like magic bridges. Wrong answers gently rerouted visitors with helpful hints written in giant cartoon balloons. A pair of grandparents navigated next, and Arif walked alongside them, turning complicated decimal steps into stories about slicing pies, which made the numbers feel warm and tasty. Within an hour, a cheerful line stretched past the soccer goal, and Coach Patel high-fived kids exiting the maze, proud that athletic energy now partnered with quick thinking. The robotics club from another district offered to place sensors that tracked visitor time, showing that cooperation was worth more than rivalry on such a sunny day. Miss Thorne approved, and soon a screen displayed fastest maze finishes, sparking friendly races while also proving that careful math beat random guessing every single run. At noon, judges in blue sashes appeared with clipboards sparkling under sunlight, and a hush fell over nearby booths as if the fair itself held its breath. Judge 1 asked Arif to explain the learning goal, and he described how every wall represented daily life, shopping discounts, recipe ratios, bus schedules, making math obviously useful. Judge 2 quizzed Omar on safety, and Omar pointed to padded edges, emergency exits, and a loudspeaker that politely guided lost explorers back to the main path. Judge 3 challenged Farah to solve a random maze question herself, and she answered in 10 seconds, proving designers learn twice by teaching once. The judges whispered together, nodding like pigeons pecking bread, then moved on, leaving a cloud of hopeful silence that burst into relieved giggles the moment they were gone. During lunch break, Arif's mom delivered biryani boxes for the team, and the spicy aroma traveled across the field like a delicious rumor, attracting volunteers who swapped food for cleanup help. A sudden gust flipped the scoreboard sheets, but Raza pinned them down with unused foam plus signs, joking that math props sometimes double as paperweights in windy emergencies. Mina arrived with a cardboard speech bubble reading Captain Symmetry says check both sides, and she posed for selfies with younger kids, turning the mascot into a tiny celebrity. Afternoon sun glared hard, so the engineer mentor stretched a tarp from the maze roof to a lamppost, giving shade like a friendly blue cloud parked just above them. Under that cloud, Arif noticed the paper crane's wings fading, so he strengthened the folds with clear tape, promising the bird it would retire to a glass frame after today's mission. At 3 sharp, the award ceremony began on the main stage, where trophies shaped like puzzle cubes waited under a shimmering silver cloth. Schools collected honorable mentions for clever posters and costumes, but Maple Leaf's name remained uncalled, making hearts bang like drumsticks on metal lunch trays. Finally, the announcer opened the last envelope and declared Maple Leaf winner of Best Interactive Learning Exhibit, and the silver cloth flew away to reveal a cube trophy glowing with LED edges. The LED edges pulsed rainbow colors every second like a breathing heartbeat of achievement. Cheers whooshed from the team, loud enough to startle the robot arm, which dropped an empty ticket roll and were an apology in rapid beeps. Arif carried the trophy down the steps, feeling its weight settle like a friendly cat in his arms while cameras flashed so brightly he saw spots shaped like tiny equal signs. The mayor presented a community grant for after-school math programs, and Ms. Thorne's eyes shimmered wetter than the fountain spraying behind the stage. Omar whispered that they had just earned level 2, and Raza added that level 3 would be turning the whole town into one giant puzzle people solve together. As cleanup started, rival teams stopped by to trade email addresses, and the field buzzed with promises of joint workshops, proving bridges built today could span far past city limits. Sunset painted the sky orange, matching the crane's taped wings, and Farah filmed Arif holding the trophy while explaining how courage multiplies when shared. Miss Thorne gathered her students in a circle, thanking each by name, and concluded that the hardest problem she once chose had produced the brightest solution she could imagine. They stacked booth pieces into the mentor's truck, each board sliding in like a chapter, closing neatly against the next, leaving footprints shaped like exclamation marks on the grass. Back at school, Arif placed the glowing cube in the trophy case beside the golden calculators, and the reflections mingled like stars, forming a new constellation called teamwork. Walking home under streetlights, he tucked the restored crane into its glass frame and whispered goodnight to future puzzles, certain that tomorrow he would write fresh problems for the new tablets and invite the whole community to play, learn, and grow together.